The Great Hall of Station Prime stretched wider than any cathedral ever built on Earth. Its walls shimmered with light from 1,000 different suns, each one representing a species that called this place the center of civilization. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the middle of it all, her blue uniform looking plain and small compared to the creatures surrounding her. She had known this day would come. The warning signs had been there for months. Complaints from the Thalaxian merchants about human trade practices, protests from the Vornum scientists about Earth's research methods, whispers in every corridor about the dangerous newcomers who refused to slow down. High Arbiter Zelthron rose from his seat, his insect-like body clicking and whirring as ancient joints moved. He had ruled the Galactic Council for 3,000 years, watching species rise and fall like waves on a shore. His compound eyes reflected Sarah's image 100 times over. Humanity. His voice boomed through translators in 1,000 languages. You stand accused of crimes against galactic stability. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Beside her, Ambassador Marcus Webb looked like he might be sick. The young diplomat had believed so strongly that reason would win the day. Now his faith was crumbling like sand. The charges scrolled across holographic displays for everyone to see. Humanity had advanced too quickly, the Council claimed. In just 200 years since first contact, humans had achieved what most species needed 2,000 years to accomplish. They had taken Council technology and improved it without permission. They had conducted dangerous experiments with quantum mechanics, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering. The final charge made Sarah's blood boil. The incident at Proxima Station. Human engineers had been trying to help, trying to make an old reactor run more efficiently. How were they supposed to know it would nearly explode? They had fixed it in time. No one had died. But the Council saw only recklessness. We have watched you carefully, Zelthron continued, his mandibles clicking with each word. You do not respect the natural order. You push against every boundary. You question every rule. Your species cannot be trusted to exist freely among civilized worlds. Natural order? Sarah finally spoke, her voice cutting through the vast chamber. You mean the order you established? The rules you made? We came to you in peace, asking only to learn and grow. And grow you did, another council member hissed, a serpentine creature from the Drath Collective. Too much, too fast, too dangerous. You are children playing with weapons you do not understand. Marcus stepped forward, his voice shaking. Please, honored council, give us another chance. We can learn restraint. We can follow your guidelines more carefully. We can— Silence. Zelthron's word hit like a hammer. The decision has been made. The vote was near unanimous. 834 species voted for containment. Only 13 abstained. None voted in your favor. The words hung in the air like poison. Sarah felt her hands curl into fists. Humanity is hereby banned from all council space, Zelthron declared. You will return to your home system, to the space around your sun called Sol. All human colonies beyond this system must be evacuated within 1 standard year. A quantum barrier will be erected around your system. You will not leave. You will not expand. You will remain contained until such time as you prove yourselves worthy of rejoining civilization. Any attempt to breach the barrier will result in total annihilation of your species. The chamber erupted in sounds from 1,000 different species. Some cheered, some remained silent, a few even protested. But the decision was final. Sarah looked up at Zelthron and saw something in those ancient eyes. Not hatred. Not even really fear. It was pity. He pitied them. The realization burned hotter than any anger. This is wrong, Sarah said quietly, but her voice carried. You're making a mistake. Perhaps, Zelthron replied, almost gently. But it is a mistake we can live with. The alternative, allowing you to continue unchecked, is a risk the galaxy cannot afford. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Sarah stood at the observation window of the transport ship, watching as they approached the Sol system. Behind them, invisible but very real, the quantum barrier was already being constructed. Great machines assembled in space, weaving energy into an impenetrable wall. Marcus sat with his head in his hands. 50 colonies, he whispered, millions of people. All coming home. Where will they go? Earth is already crowded. Sarah didn't answer. She was thinking about something else entirely. Something dangerous. The barrier went up on a Tuesday afternoon, Earth Standard Time. From Luna Base, Sarah watched the sky change. A shimmer of energy, barely visible, cut across the stars. It was beautiful in its own way. A prison made of light. Her second-in-command, Colonel Davidson, stood beside her. "What now, Admiral?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Outside, Earth hung in space like a blue marble, beautiful and defiant. Humanity had walked on other worlds, built cities under alien suns, touched the face of the infinite, and now they were locked in a cage. "Now?" Sarah said softly, her reflection staring back at her from the window, superimposed over the glowing barrier. "Now we show them what happens when you try to cage humanity. We don't break, we don't surrender, we evolve." She turned to face Davidson, and her eyes held a fire that made him straighten up. "Get me Dr. Yamamoto, and tell him to gather every scientist who's ever been called too radical, too dangerous, too ambitious. Tell them we have work to do. Tell them the Council just made the biggest mistake in galactic history." Davidson saluted and left. Sarah turned back to the window, looking at the barrier that was meant to contain them. "They think they've stopped us," she whispered to the empty room. "They have no idea what they've just done." The barrier pulsed with energy, steady and strong. Behind it, humanity began to plan. 20 years had passed since the barrier went up. On Earth, people went about their daily lives as if they had accepted their fate. Ships moved between planets in the Sol system, mining asteroids, building stations, living quiet lives under the watchful eyes of Council observers stationed just beyond the barrier. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto looked nothing like the young scientist who had first proposed the impossible. Now 73 years old, his hair completely white, he stood in a hidden laboratory deep beneath the surface of Europa. Ice groaned above him, kilometers of frozen water hiding the greatest secret in human history. "Run the test again," he said to his assistant, a brilliant young woman named Elena Vasquez. Elena's fingers danced across holographic controls. "Doctor, we've run it 47 times. The results don't change." "Then we run it 48 times, Yamamoto replied, but he was smiling. "Because if we're right, Elena, if we're truly right, then everything changes." The device in the center of the lab hummed to life. It looked like a sphere made of light and mathematics, floating in midair. Around it, space itself seemed to bend and twist. Then, with a sound like reality sighing, a hole appeared. Not a hole in the wall or the floor, a hole in existence itself. Through the hole, they could see another place. A small room, maybe 3 meters across, floating in nothing. It was stable. It was real. And it existed nowhere in the normal universe. "Pocket 1 remains stable," Elena reported, her voice shaking with excitement. "Dimensional integrity at 100%. No energy bleed. No gravitational anomalies. Doctor, we did it. We created a pocket dimension." Yamamoto sat down heavily. His life's work, the theory that had made him a laughingstock back on Earth, was real. The Council thought they understood the universe. They thought they knew the rules. But humanity had found a loophole. Far above, on Mars, Admiral Sarah Chen received the encrypted message. She was older now, grayer, but her eyes still burned, with that same fire. She read Yamamoto's words 3 times to make sure she understood. "They did it," she said to her staff. "The theory works. We can create spaces that exist outside normal reality, spaces the Council can't detect, can't access, can't control." Her chief engineer, a grizzled veteran named Thomas Park, whistled low. "How big can they make them?" "Yamamoto thinks there's no limit. If we have enough power, we could create spaces the size of moons, planets, maybe bigger." The room went silent. As everyone absorbed that information, "We'd need resources," someone said. "Massive amounts of material, energy, computing power." Sarah smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. Good thing we have an entire solar system and nothing else to do. Get me the Industrial Council. Tell them Project Elsewhere is moving to Phase 2. And tell them to keep everything looking normal on the surface. The Council observers can't suspect anything. The observers didn't suspect. How could they? Every scan showed normal human activity. Earth's population remained steady. Mining operations proceeded at expected rates. The humans seemed to have accepted their cage. They couldn't see the truth. Beneath the surface of every planet and moon, humanity was building. On Mars, in underground caverns large enough to hold cities, factories worked day and night. On Europa, beneath the ice, research stations pushed the boundaries of physics. In the asteroid belt, hidden facilities assembled components for ships that wouldn't fly through normal space. And on Titan, in a laboratory carved from frozen methane, Yamamoto's team created their masterpiece. We're calling it Pocket 7, Elena explained to the assembled representatives of Earth's secret government. She was only 32, but she had become one of humanity's leading experts on dimensional engineering. It's the size of Earth's moon, stable, breathable atmosphere. We can anchor access points from anywhere in the Sol system. The representatives stared at the holographic display showing a world that shouldn't exist, a world hidden in the folds of reality itself. How many of these can we make? Asked President Li Chen, Earth's current leader and Sarah Chen's niece. As many as we need, Elena replied. Each pocket dimension requires an initial energy investment, but once created, they're self-sustaining. We could build hundreds, thousands, and the Council will never know. The Council doesn't even know pocket dimensions are possible. Their physics says it can't be done. They never thought to look for something they believe doesn't exist. Plans were drawn up in secret meetings across the solar system, not just to create hiding places, but to build an entire civilization invisible to the galaxy. They would call it the Realm, this network of pocket dimensions connected by access points that humans could open at will. Yamamoto watched his students and successors take his work further than he ever imagined. His health was failing now, his body giving out after years of work in harsh conditions. But he lived long enough to see Pocket 50 created, a massive dimension that would serve as humanity's new capital. On his deathbed, in a quiet room on Europa, Elena sat with him. We're going to do it, she told him. We're going to move most of humanity into the realm within 10 years. By the time the Council realizes anything is wrong, we'll be beyond their reach. Yamamoto smiled weakly. I wish I could see it. A civilization existing in spaces between spaces. Humanity unbound. You already have seen it, Doctor. You made it possible. He died 3 hours later, satisfied that his species would survive, would thrive. The migration began slowly, carefully. A few thousand people at first, volunteers and researchers who would build the infrastructure in the pocket dimensions. Then tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. The process was hidden, behind normal population movements. People who officially moved to Mars colonies actually stepped through access points into the realm. Birth records were carefully managed. Death certificates were filed for people who had simply moved to another dimension. The Council observers saw what they expected to see, a contained humanity, slowly adapting to their prison. They didn't see the truth. By year 20, 5 billion humans lived in the realm. Massive cities floated in pocket dimensions where physics worked just slightly differently, allowing for technologies the Council had deemed impossible. Farms existed in dimensions where time moved faster, growing years of crops in days. Factories in dimensions with altered physical constants produced materials that couldn't exist in normal space. And in military dimensions, hidden from everyone except the highest leaders, humanity built weapons, ships that could phase between realities, soldiers trained in altered gravity, enhanced by technologies the Council had banned. An entire fleet that existed nowhere in the normal universe, waiting for a day that might never come. Sarah Chen, now 80 years old but kept healthy by medical advances born in the realm, stood in Pocket 50 and looked at the city sprawling before her. Millions of people lived here, in a space that officially didn't exist. Children played in parks under artificial suns. Workers commuted through access points that could take them anywhere in the Sol system instantly. My granddaughter asked me, "Today, if we'll ever go back to the stars," she said to Elena, who had become her closest advisor. "What did you tell her?" Sarah smiled. "I told her we never left. We're already there. Building a realm the council can't even imagine. And when we're ready, when we're strong enough, we'll show them what they created when they tried to cage us." Elena nodded. The first phase ship completed trials yesterday. It reached Alpha Centauri and back without the council detecting it. We can leave anytime we want now. Not yet. Let them think they've won. Let them feel safe. We'll reveal ourselves when the time is right. Far beyond the barrier, the galaxy continued as it always had. Never suspecting that behind the prison they had built, humanity was becoming something new, something the council couldn't control, something they would never see coming. Elena Vasquez had become something more than human. At 52 years old, she had spent so much time in pocket dimensions with altered physics that her body had adapted. Neural implants connected her thoughts directly to the realm's networks. Genetic modifications allowed her to survive in spaces where normal humans couldn't exist. She was the grand architect, the person responsible for designing reality itself. She stood in what they called the design space, a pocket dimension where time moved differently. Here, she could work for weeks, while only hours passed in normal space. Around her, holographic blueprints showed the current state of the realm. 3,247 pocket dimensions, each serving a specific purpose. "The core worlds are complete," her assistant reported. The young man had been born in the realm, had never seen Earth's sky except in recordings. 7 dimensions, each the size of Earth. Population capacity, 12 billion humans. Elena nodded, manipulating the display with her thoughts. The core worlds were their greatest achievement. Entire planets that existed in hidden folds of reality, each carefully designed for maximum efficiency. One had perfect weather control. Another had continents shaped specifically for agriculture. A third was a single massive ocean for aquaculture and research. What about the industrial spheres? 412 operational. We've been experimenting with dimensions where strong nuclear force is slightly weaker. Makes it easier to manipulate matter at the atomic level. Production rates are exceeding projections by 30%. 30% better than impossible, Elena thought with satisfaction. The industrial spheres were pocket dimensions where physics worked just differently enough to allow manufacturing techniques that couldn't exist in normal space. Materials that were too unstable elsewhere remained solid there. Reactions that required enormous energy in regular space occurred naturally. The Academy dimension was Elena's personal pride. Time there moved at a ratio of 10 to 1, 10 days, inside for every day outside. Students could spend years learning, training, advancing, while barely any time passed in the rest of the realm. Humanity was developing specialists at an incredible rate. Scientists with decades of experience who were still young, soldiers trained for years and months, engineers who had built hundreds of projects before turning 30. But it was the arsenal that kept Elena awake at night. Admiral James Okonkwo, Sarah Chen's successor, had pushed for weapons development that made even Elena nervous. Entire pocket dimensions designed specifically for war, where physics allowed for weapons the Council had never imagined. She visited one now, stepping through an access point that opened like a tear in reality. The dimension beyond was dark, lit only by the glow of weapons testing ranges stretching to infinity. Because in this dimension, space didn't work the same way. It could be infinite or small, depending on what you needed. Grand Architect Okonkwo greeted her. He was a massive man, enhanced muscles and reinforced bones making him look more like a statue than a person. "Come to see the new toys? Come to make sure you haven't built anything that will destroy all of reality," Elena replied dryly. He laughed, a sound like thunder. "Only tested that twice. We're being much more careful now." He showed her the phase ships, sleek vessels that could exist partially in normal space and partially in other dimensions simultaneously. They could pass through solid matter, appear and disappear at will, and were completely invisible to conventional sensors. The realm now had 10,000 of them. Each one is crewed by augmented humans, Okonkwo explained. Enhanced reflexes, neural interfaces, able to survive in multiple dimensions at once. The Council thinks humanity is still the same species they locked away. They have no idea what we've become. Elena watched as a demonstration began. A phase ship flickered in and out of existence, appearing to be in a dozen places at once. Weapons that existed in other dimensions fired at targets in normal space, destroying them without any visible beam or projectile. "It's too much," she said quietly. "We're changing too fast, becoming too different from what we were." "We're surviving," Okonkwo countered. "We're adapting. That's what humans do. Always have." Back in the core worlds, life had taken on a strange, new normal. Cities floated in skies where gravity was whatever engineers wanted it to be. Parks existed in dimensions with 7 seasons, each one carefully designed for beauty and function. Transportation was instantaneous through access points, meaning someone could live in one pocket dimension and work in another 1,000 dimensions away. The population transfer had been completed 5 years earlier. 13 billion humans now lived in the realm. Earth held only a few million, mostly volunteers maintaining the illusion for the Council observers. AI constructs, nearly perfect copies of human behavior, filled out the population numbers on scans. The observers saw a civilization that had accepted containment and moved on with their lives. They couldn't have been more wrong. Zara Chen, Sarah's granddaughter and now a ship captain in the Realm fleet, stood on the bridge of the Unbowed, one of the largest phase ships ever built. At 30 years old, she had spent her entire adult life preparing for a war that might never come. Training in the Academy dimension, learning to command vessels that operated by rules the Council didn't know existed. "Captain," her navigator called out, "we're approaching the barrier." Zara watched as the quantum wall came into view on their sensors. The prison the Council had built 50 years ago, still strong, still solid, still completely irrelevant. "Phase. Shift to point 8, she commanded. "Take us through." The ship shuddered slightly as it shifted partially out of normal space. The barrier designed to block matter and energy in conventional space couldn't touch something that was only partly there. The Unbowed passed through like a ghost through a wall. They emerged in Council space completely undetected. Zara allowed herself a small smile. They had been doing this for years now, sending ships beyond the barrier to observe, to learn, to map the galaxy that thought humanity was still locked away. "Take us to Alpha Centauri," she ordered. "Let's see what the Council is up to today." Far, above Earth, or what passed for above in space, a Council observer named Zelthix completed another routine scan. Everything appeared normal. Human population stable at approximately 4 billion spread across the Sol system. Technology advancement at acceptable rates. No attempts to breach the barrier. The containment was working perfectly. Zelthix filed the report and moved on to other duties, never knowing that at that exact moment, 13 billion humans lived in a realm he couldn't detect. Flying ships his sensors couldn't see. Wielding technologies his species thought impossible. In the Architect's Council chamber, a pocket dimension, designed specifically for leadership, the debate raged. "We should reveal ourselves now," one member argued. "Show the galaxy what we've become, take our place among the stars." "No," another countered. "We're not ready. The Council has weapons we haven't accounted for. Technology they haven't shared with anyone. We need more time." Elena stood and the chamber fell silent. As Grand Architect, her voice carried weight. "We wait," she said firmly. "One more generation. We build 3,000 more pocket dimensions. We expand the fleet, we perfect our technologies. And then when we're truly ready, we don't just reveal ourselves. We show them a power the galaxy has never seen. We make sure that when humanity returns to the stars, no one will ever cage us again." The vote was called. The decision was made. One more generation of building. One more generation of hiding. And then the galaxy would learn what happened when you tried to contain humanity. On Earth, in one of the few remaining surface cities, an old woman sat in a park and watched children play. Sarah Chen was 120 years old now, kept alive by realm medicine that the council thought impossible. She had seen it all: the judgment, the barrier, the desperate years, and the glorious rise of the realm. She wouldn't live to see the final revelation, she knew. But it didn't matter. She had lived long enough to see humanity survive, to see them thrive, to see them become something magnificent and terrible and free. A young girl ran up to her, one of the few children still born on Earth. "Great-grandmother," the girl asked, "will we ever see the real stars?" Sarah smiled and pointed up at the sky where the barrier shimmered invisibly. "My dear," she said softly, "we already do. Every day, in ways the council can't imagine. And someday soon, everyone will know it." The child ran off to play, satisfied. Sarah sat back and closed her eyes, listening to the sounds of Earth. Her Earth. Free Earth. Hidden Earth. The galaxy thought humanity was trapped. They had no idea the trap had become a fortress. The cage had become a kingdom. And soon, very soon, the prison doors would open from the inside. The attack on Carthax Prime began at dawn, though dawn meant nothing in space. The Vrix Sovereignty Fleet, 3,000 ships strong, descended on the Council colony like locusts. Their weapons were ancient and terrible, technology from civilizations, dead before the Council existed. Reality itself seemed to scream as their guns fired. High Arbiter Zelthron watched from Station Prime, his ancient body trembling. He had ruled for 3,000 years, and in all that time, he had never seen such slaughter. The Council fleet, 500 ships of various species, fought bravely and died quickly. Modern shields couldn't stop Vrix weapons. Modern tactics couldn't predict their movements. "How many colonies have they taken?" he asked. 17, his aide replied. "A young Thalaxian barely old enough to serve. 12 more are under attack. Casualties are in the billions." Zelthron felt every one of his 3,000 years. The Vrix had appeared 5 years ago, from deep space beyond the mapped regions. At first, they had seemed like any other species, seeking council membership. Then they had shown their true nature: conquerors, destroyers, collectors of worlds. "Send word to all council members," he said tiredly. "Total war protocols. Every species must contribute their full military strength." But he knew it wouldn't be enough. The council had been at peace for millennia. Their weapons were ceremonial. Their tactics were theoretical. They were scholars trying to fight barbarians, and they were losing badly. In the realm, Zara Chen watched, the same battle on screens that showed what the council couldn't hide. She was 40 now, captain of the Unbowed for 10 years. She had spent her entire life preparing for combat, and now combat was happening. But not to humanity, to the galaxy that had caged them. "We should help them," she said to her command crew. "Help the people who imprisoned us?" her first officer asked incredulously. "The ones who called us too dangerous to exist?" "Help the billions of innocent people who are dying," Zara replied sharply. "Help before the Vrix reach species who never voted against us. Help because it's the right thing to do." The debate spread across the realm like fire. In every pocket dimension, humans argued. Some said, "Let the council burn. It was justice for K," the 50 years of imprisonment. Others said humanity was better than revenge. The Architects' Council met in emergency session. Elena Vasquez was 72 now, more machine than human, her consciousness distributed across multiple pocket dimensions. Simultaneously, she spoke and her words echoed in 1,000 meeting halls at once. "We built all of this to survive," she said. "But survival means nothing if we lose our humanity in the process. We became strong to protect ourselves. But strength means nothing if we watch genocide and do nothing. I vote we reveal ourselves. I vote we fight." The vote took 6 hours. In the end, it was nearly unanimous. Humanity would intervene, but they wouldn't announce themselves first. They would show the galaxy what they had become through action, not words. The Battle of Carthax Prime had been raging for 3 hours when reality tore open. Not like a door opening, but like fabric ripping. 500 phase ships emerged from nowhere, their designs unlike anything in the galaxy. They were beautiful and terrible, all curves and angles that shouldn't exist, hulls that seemed to be solid and transparent at the same time. The Vrix fleet immediately targeted them. Ancient weapons that could crack planets fired at the newcomers. The phase ships flickered and the weapons passed through them, hitting nothing. The ships existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Attacks in normal space couldn't touch something that was only partially there. Then humanity fired back. Weapons emerged from dimensions the Vrix couldn't perceive. Missiles that traveled through folded space, appearing inside enemy ships without ever crossing the distance between. Beams that attacked matter at the quantum level, unmaking ships atom by atom. Fighters that could be in 12 places at once because they existed in 12 different realities simultaneously. The Vrix fleet, which had been winning easily against the Council, suddenly found itself fighting an enemy it couldn't understand. Ships disappeared and reappeared. Weapons struck from impossible angles. The humans moved with a coordination that seemed telepathic because it was neural networks linking every ship into a single vast intelligence. In 47 minutes, the Vrix fleet was disabled. Not destroyed, Zara had ordered her people to be precise, but completely unable to fight. 3,000 ships floated dead in space, their crews alive but trapped. The surviving Council ships sat silent, sensors struggling to understand what they had just witnessed. Zara opened a communication channel. Her image, along with images from all 500 ships, appeared on every screen in the sector. "This is Captain Zara Chen of the Realm Fleet," she said calmly. "We are human. We are no longer the species you imprisoned 50 years ago. We are no longer asking for your permission to exist. But we will not stand by and watch genocide. Consider this a demonstration of good faith. We can help you survive the Vrix, or we can leave you to face them alone. The choice is yours." The message ended. The human fleet didn't wait for a response. Reality tore open again and they disappeared, leaving the Council to process what had just happened. Station Prime erupted in chaos. Representatives from 800 species all shouting at once, demanding explanations, threatening war, begging for alliance. Zelthron sat in his chamber and felt the weight of 3,000 years pressing down on him. "Bring me every scan we have of that battle," he ordered. "Every sensor reading, every tactical analysis. I want to know what the humans have become." The reports came in over the next day. They were terrifying. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions, weapons that ignored shields by attacking from different realities, coordination beyond any known species. Technology that the Council's best scientists said was theoretically impossible. "How?" Zelthron whispered, reading the reports. "How did they advance this far? We contained them. We watched them." His chief scientist, a Vornim named Shalex, pulled up sensor logs from the Sol system. "We saw what they wanted us to see, Arbiter. Population numbers that were probably fake. Technology advancement that was carefully controlled to seem normal. Meanwhile, in ways we couldn't detect, they were building an entire civilization we never knew existed. But where? Our scans showed every planet, every station. The theory suggests pocket dimensions," Shalex said quietly. "Spaces that exist outside normal reality. The Council's physics says it's impossible, but the Council's physics was apparently wrong." Zelthron felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Not for himself, but for the entire galactic order he had spent 3,000 years maintaining. If humanity could do this, could hide an entire civilization in plain sight, what else was possible? What other rules were wrong? A message arrived from humanity. Not a communication request, but coordinates. An invitation to Nexus Station, a structure the humans claimed to have built at the edge of Council space. A place to talk. The Council debated for 2 days. Some species demanded immediate attack before humanity grew stronger. Others pointed out that humanity was probably already stronger, and attacking would be suicide. A few advocated immediate surrender and begging for mercy. In the end, Zelthron made the decision. A delegation would go to Nexus Station. They would talk. They would try to understand what humanity had become and what they wanted. The delegation consisted of representatives from 50 key species, accompanied by the largest remaining council fleet, 1,000 ships. It was meant to show strength, but everyone knew it was meaningless. If humanity could disable 3,000 Vrix ships in under an hour, 1,000 council ships wouldn't even slow them down. Nexus Station appeared on their sensors when they were still a light year away. It was massive, larger than any structure the council had ever built. Not a sphere or a ring like council designs, but something organic and beautiful, like a flower made of metal and energy, petals spreading out in multiple dimensions. As they approached, they realized each petal was a docking bay large enough for a capital ship. The station existed partially in normal space and partially in other dimensions, shifting and flickering in ways that hurt to watch. "They built this," Zelthran whispered. "While we thought they were contained, they built this. What else have they built?" The delegation docked and was escorted into the station by humans who looked almost normal. Almost. Enhanced muscles visible beneath clothing. Eyes that reflected light wrong, seeing beyond normal spectrums. Neural implants visible at temples, connecting them to networks the council couldn't perceive. They were taken to a conference chamber that was impossibly large, bigger than the station's external dimensions should allow. Another pocket dimension, Zeltron realized. The entire station was riddled with them. Zara Chen waited for them along with Elena Vasquez and a dozen other human leaders. Behind them, visible through windows that shouldn't exist, the Realm fleet waited. 10,000 ships, each one impossible, each one deadly. "Welcome," Zara said simply. "We have much to discuss." Zelthron stepped forward, his ancient body clicking with every movement. He looked at the humans who had once stood before the council as supplicants and saw something completely different. Not supplicants, not even equals. Something beyond, something the council couldn't categorize. "What do you want?" he asked simply. "What we've always wanted," Elena replied. "To exist. To grow, to be free. We're not asking to rejoin your council. We're offering you a choice. Accept that humanity is sovereign, that we answer to no one but ourselves and we can be allies. Or try to cage us again, and we'll show you why that would be a terrible mistake." Before Zeltron could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A Vrix fleet had appeared in the sector, larger than any before, and they weren't attacking a colony. They were heading straight for Station Prime, the heart of Council civilization. Zelthran turned to Zara, desperation in his ancient eyes. "Please," he said, and the word tasted like ash. "Help us." Zara looked at Elena, then at her fellow captains. They all nodded. "Agreed," Zara said. "But after this, things change. After this, you acknowledge what we've become. Deal?" Zelthran hesitated only. "A moment, deal." The Vrix fleet heading for Station Prime numbered 5,000 ships, the largest force they had assembled yet. The Council's remaining fleet, battered from weeks of losses, could barely muster 2,000. It should have been a slaughter. The Realm fleet arrived first. 10,000 phase ships materialized around Station Prime like stars appearing in an empty sky. Zara stood on the bridge of the Unbowed, now flagship of humanity's military, and watched the Vrix fleet approach on sensors that could see across multiple dimensions at once. "This is it," she said to her crew. "Everything we've built. Everything we've prepared for. Today the galaxy learns what humanity has become." The Vrix opened fire first, as they always did. Their ancient weapons tore at reality itself, the same weapons that had devastated council fleets. But the human ships flickered and phased, existing in dimensions the weapons couldn't reach. The Vrix had fought the council, species bound by conventional physics. They had never fought an enemy that could simply step outside reality when attacked. Humanity's response was overwhelming. Ships that could attack from a dozen dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that appeared inside enemy vessels without crossing the space between. Fighters that moved faster than light by taking shortcuts through folded space. The battle was less a fight and more a demonstration of impossible technology. But something was wrong. Zara saw it in the tactical displays, patterns that didn't make sense. The Vrix were losing, but they were also retreating in a specific direction, not running away randomly, but heading toward something with purpose. "Track their trajectory," she commanded. "Where are they going?" The answer came seconds later and made her blood run cold. The Vrix weren't just attacking. They were fleeing, and they were heading toward a massive dimensional rift that hadn't been there before. A tier, in reality, that was growing larger by the second. "All ships hold fire," Zara commanded. "Something bigger is happening here." She opened a channel to the Vrix flagship. A face appeared on screen, reptilian and scarred, but the eyes showed something she hadn't expected. Desperation. "Human," the Vrix commander said, the translator making his voice sound hollow. "If you're as advanced as you appear, scan the rift. Tell me you see it too." Zara ordered a full-dimensional scan. What appeared on her screens made her understand everything. Beyond the rift, pushing through from another reality, were things. Not ships, not creatures. Things that existed as hunger-given form, eating their way through dimensions themselves. "What are they?" she asked. "The Devourers," the Vrix commander replied. "Entities from a dying universe consuming realities to sustain themselves. We're not conquerors, human. We're refugees. We've been running from them for 300 years. We came to Council space because we had nowhere else to go. The weapon we've been using isn't a weapon. It's a dimensional seal, trying to close rifts before they can follow us." Zara felt the bottom drop out of her world. The Vrix weren't the enemy, they were victims. And humanity had just protected the Council from the very species trying to save the galaxy from something worse. "Change of plans," she announced to the entire realm fleet. "The Vrix are not hostile. The things coming through that rift are the real threat. All ships defensive formation around the rift. Prepare to engage unknown entities." The Devourers emerged in force, and they were worse than any nightmare. Beings made of void and hunger, they didn't destroy ships so much as unmake them, eating the very reality that allowed them to exist. Council weapons had no effect. Even Vrix weapons only slowed them down. But humanity's dimension-phasing technology was different. Ships that could exist outside normal reality could hurt things that consumed normal reality. Weapons that attacked from other dimensions could damage beings that existed between dimensions. For the first time, the Devourers faced prey that could fight back. The battle raged for 12 hours. Humanity, Council, and Vrix fought side by side, learning each other's tactics in real time. Zara coordinated a defense across multiple dimensions simultaneously, using the realm's neural networks to think faster than any individual could. Slowly, impossibly, they pushed the Devourers back through the rift. But more rifts were opening. The Devourers had found Council space, and they were coming in force. Elena Vasquez arrived at the battle site in a ship that was more laboratory than warship. She had spent the last 6 hours working on something impossible even by realm standards. When she presented it to the combined leadership, even Zelthron struggled to comprehend it. "We call it the Aegis," Elena explained, projecting holographic designs that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. "A network that will seal the entire galaxy in a protective dimensional shell. The Devourers consume reality, but they can only consume one reality at a time. If we layer multiple realities over each other, create a barrier that exists in all dimensions simultaneously, they won't be able to break through." "Can you build such a thing?" Zelthron asked. "Not alone," Elena admitted. "We need realm dimensional technology, Council resources and computing power, and Vrix knowledge of the Devourer's nature. We need everyone working together." The Vrix commander, who identified himself as War Leader Krax, nodded slowly. "We have studied them for centuries. We know their weaknesses. We can help." For the first time in galactic history, 3 civilizations that should have been enemies worked as one. Vrix ships carried human engineers to rift sites. Council stations provided power for realm-dimensional anchors. Species that had never communicated before shared data through humanity's neural networks. The construction of the Aegis took 6 months. 6 months of constant fighting against devourer incursions. 6 months of losses and victories of species learning to trust each other through necessity. Humanity opened parts of the realm to council and Vrix workers, letting them see the impossible civilization humanity had built. Understanding replaced fear. Respect replaced prejudice. Zelthran walked through a realm city, a pocket dimension, where millions of humans lived in a space that couldn't exist. He watched children play in gravity that changed with thought, saw factories producing materials that couldn't exist in normal space, witnessed a civilization that had transcended the physical limitations of the universe itself. We were fools, he admitted to Elena, who guided him through the wonders. We saw your potential and called it danger. We should have called it hope. You made a decision based on fear, Elena replied, and we responded by becoming something you feared even more. Neither of us was entirely right. But maybe we can both do better now. The final activation of the Aegis happened simultaneously, across the galaxy. Billions of dimensional anchors built by all three civilizations activated in perfect synchronization. Reality itself flexed and folded, creating a shell around the Milky Way galaxy. Not a wall, but a maze. Devourers trying to enter would find themselves trapped between dimensions, lost in spaces that looped endlessly back on themselves. The last Devourer assault broke against the Aegis and couldn't penetrate. They pushed and clawed at the barrier, but it held. After 300 years of running, the Vrix were finally safe. After 50,000 years of unchallenged rule, the Council had learned they weren't alone at the top. After 50 years of imprisonment, humanity had saved their jailers. Station Prime held a ceremony. Representatives from every species gathered, including humans who had once been banned from this very chamber. The Galactic Council was formally dissolved and reformed as the Galactic Assembly, a true democracy where every species, including humanity and the Vrix, had equal standing. High Arbiter Zelthron, his title now meaningless, stood before the assembly, and spoke words he never thought he would say. 50 years ago, I stood here and judged humanity too dangerous to exist freely. I was wrong. Not because they weren't dangerous, but because I confused danger with evil. Humanity was dangerous because they pushed boundaries, because they refused to accept limitations, because they evolved faster than we could understand. Those qualities didn't make them a threat. They made them survivors. And in the end, those qualities saved us all. He turned to Zara, to Elena, to the human delegation. On behalf of the Council of the Assembly of the Galaxy, I apologize. We tried to cage you. We tried to limit you. We tried to make you smaller than you were. And you responded by becoming greater than we imagined possible. Thank you for being the better species. Thank you for saving us despite what we did to you. The quantum barrier around Sol finally came down. For the first time in 50 years, the wall of energy that had caged humanity dissolved into nothing. From Earth, people watched the stars reappear, no longer blocked by the shimmering prison. In a park on Earth, in a place where Sarah Chen once sat with her great-granddaughter, a monument was unveiled. Simple stone with 2 dates, 2347 and 2397. The words carved into it were brief. They tried to contain us. They tried to limit us. They forgot we were human. We don't accept cages, we build new worlds. Zara stood before the monument with her grandmother's granddaughter, a young girl named Sarah, like the admiral who had started it all. Why did they lock us away? The child asked. Because they were afraid, Zara replied. Afraid of what we could become. And they were right to be afraid in a way. We became something they never expected. We became their salvation. Are we still human? The child asked. After all the changes? Zara smiled. More human than ever, because being human was never about staying the same. It was always about adapting, surviving, becoming more than we were. The Council tried to keep us in a cage. They didn't realize the cage would become a chrysalis. 50 years later, the galaxy looked different. Human pocket dimensions dotted the stars, offering sanctuary to any species that wanted it. Realm technology had been shared freely, advancing the entire galaxy by millennia in decades. The Vrix had settled into council space, their warrior culture finding new purpose in defending the Aegis. And at the edge of everything, where the Aegis shimmered with impossible light, guards from 100 species watched for threats that might never come. Among them were humans, their ships phasing between realities, their minds connected across dimensions, their eyes seeing wavelengths that natural evolution never intended. A young alien student, studying the history of the last 100 years, asked their human teacher a question. Did we win? Did humanity win? The teacher, a third-generation realm citizen whose body could exist in 3 dimensions simultaneously, smiled. Everyone won. That's the point. The council learned that different isn't dangerous. The Vrix learned that refugees can become family, and humanity learned that strength without compassion makes you no better than those who caged you. But humanity saved everyone, the student persisted. Doesn't that make you the heroes? The teacher looked out at the stars, at the galaxy that had once feared them and now welcomed them. We're not heroes, we're just humans. We break rules and push boundaries and refuse to accept limitations. That's what we've always done. The council tried to stop that, tried to make us normal, tried to contain what makes us human. They failed because you can't cage a species whose entire history is about escaping cages. So what are you now? The teacher thought about the realm, about pocket dimensions housing trillions, about ships that sailed between realities, about a civilization that had transcended the physical limitations of the universe. They thought about humanity spreading across the galaxy not as conquerors but as helpers, sharing impossible technologies and building bridges between species that had never understood each other. We're free, the teacher said simply. We're finally, completely free. And we're making sure everyone else can be free too. That's what makes us human. Not the technology, not the power. The choice to use that power to lift others up instead of push them down. The student looked satisfied with that answer. They both turned back to watch the stars, where humans and aliens worked together to guard a galaxy that had learned a simple truth. You don't control greatness. You don't limit potential. You don't cage the species that might save you. You let them fly, and you fly with them. Far beyond the Aegis, in the cold space between galaxies, the Devourers still pushed against the barrier. But it held. It would always hold. Because humanity had built it, and humanity didn't know how to build things that broke. They only knew how to build things that lasted forever. The galaxy was safe. The cage was gone. And humanity, banned and imprisoned and forgotten, had become the foundation upon which a new galactic civilization was built, not through conquest or domination, but through the simple act of refusing to be anything less than what they could be. In the end, the council had been right about one thing. Humanity was dangerous. Dangerous to tyrants. Dangerous to limits. Dangerous to anyone who said you can't, and the galaxy was better for it.